Hello everybody and welcome to Work to Game. My name is Brian, and in this Red Mage Controller guide, we're going to be covering a lot of detail about how we set up our controller, how we lay out our skills, what kind of rotations that you should be considering when playing the job, as well as my overall thoughts of Red Mage and more. Now, this has been updated as a patch 5.1, and obviously, as the future rolls, inevitably, there's going to be more updates to the job itself as we see other expansions. So, if you find this video for some reason being recommended, and obviously a lot of time has passed, be sure to check one of the top links in the description for our controller guide playlist to find out if we've updated it, or if you've missed a controller guide that we've rolled out. Also, I do want to direct you to the Ultimate Controller Guide. We put this out a little while ago. This really goes into a lot of depth about everything that you want to know about how to play this game with a controller. So be sure to check that out, whether you're new on Xbox, whether you're on PS4, or you just like me prefer to play with a controller on PC. All options are on the table. So if for some reason this guide doesn't address a certain question that you have, maybe we gloss over it in too quickly, note that the Ultimate Controller Guide is there for you. And again, that's going to be included in the Controller Guide playlist. So be sure to check it out. So a few editor's notes as well. We do have a podcast highlights channel that we've been putting a lot of really great clips from the podcast over the last year over on it. Link will be in the description below. Please go and subscribe to the podcast highlights channel. Let us know what you think. We've got a lot of really great guests lined up for 2020. I really can't wait to share that information with you here in a little bit. But beyond that, I do also want to say thank you to our YouTube members. We've got Professor Gospel Green, Mary RPG, Wolford, Ben, Randy, David, Neo, Magu, and Joshua. Thank you guys. Those are our recent members that we had join us on the last live stream. So if you want to be like them and help sponsor videos like this, be sure to hit that join button. You can always do it when we're live as well. We're doing mount giveaways and more for members and all kinds of fun things. So we've been having a lot of fun with this game and more. So I just want to say thank you to all of our members, all of our Patreons for making guides like this possible. So without further ado, let's talk about the Red Mage. Let's dive into my controller layout and talk about our rotations and more. One of the things I soon learned as I was playing the DPS roles as opposed to tank and healer within the world of Final Fantasy XIV is how easy it is to get laser focused in on what is going on with your rotation, and you end up becoming a floor tank. That's where the Dragoon floor tank really joke comes into play within the world of Final Fantasy XIV. So how can we help manage that expectation, keeping your maximum DPS up, especially while you're learning a job, and also keeping you out of bad? And that's where you want to use the game system, the HUD layout, to turn on various hotbars to be able to feed you the detail on where you are in your rotation so you can help learn it. It doesn't have to always be 100% memory based. So you can see here I've got hotbar 4 and 5. You can always come into your UI settings, turn them on. You can change the layout of those. Again, we go over this in full detail as a part of our HUD layout, our Ultimate Controller Guide, and more. Again, links in the description. Thank you very much. I'll stop plugging our playlists. But what you can see here is I've got it basically just kind of an example of a rotation. I don't need this as a Red Mage. I'm only putting this up here to kind of help drive that. This will allow you to basically drag and drop skills on. And if you don't have a mouse and keyboard, if you're 100% controller, pressing L1 and down on the right stick, bring you into basically virtual mouse mode. You can use your right stick to move the mouse around and drag and drop. Basically, it's a very awful mouse, but it does get the job done. Pressing L1 and R3 again will turn that off, thus returning camera control back to the right stick. Anyway, so I just wanted to point that out because there is no reason you can't help build yourself a rotational guide up. So based off of what we talk about here, feel free if you're learning Red Mage or if you're just watching this out of curiosity for another job that you're looking at playing as a caster or even as a melee DPS, keep this in mind. It's a little bit different for healers and tanks because there isn't so much a rotation. There are obviously rotations, but beyond that, the DPS is so much more pivotal to maintaining your maximum DPS and all that. Anyway, I digress on that. I just wanted to point that out real quick so you guys could have a good idea. And you can kind of see here I've got a couple different hotbars laid out to help give me some visual key indicators as opposed to the different jobs that I'm playing and more. Okay, so now let's talk about my layout. Here we've got hotbar 3 that I've got my left cross hotbar, right cross hotbar, and my main cross hotbar, and expanded. So tons of hotbars here. But that's one of the things that makes really Final Fantasy XIV super unique, is that it really manages its controller really well. So if you want to see about setting up your like my HUD layout this way, it's listed right here. Hotbar 3 is the reason I put that bar there and not 1 or 2, because 1 or 2 are going to have items, icons that are going to just feed you information. You're not actually clicking on any of this. If you're going to be like, how do you access the embolden right here? You don't. Embolden's actually here on my double cross hotbar with a double tap of the right trigger and a double tap of the left trigger. So just really quickly, just because I know this is going to be one of the questions that comes up most often, is how is that done? How do you turn that on? You want to go here into your cross hotbar settings, character settings, always display cross hotbar. And I do have return to cross hotbar input after using it. So if I just go ahead and use a skill right here, you can see it refocuses me back onto the right trigger and vice versa. So I can just kind of do this. Or yeah, and it's going to, no matter what, it's going to return me back to that action and more. Very handy. Usually these are more for one-off abilities than anything else. Anyway, that's a little aside. I want to go over these skills here. We have Embolden, Acceleration, Magnification, Riposte, Zitsurku, Redoublement, Displacement, and Corp de Corps. These again are just communicating to me different information. You can see most of these skills are actually on the right hand side. This is just for kind of left brain, right brain, Brian. I've got my kind of physical melee here. I've got my magical casting, left side, right side. There is this mental shift that when it comes to the Red Mage itself as a job of casting and a job of melee, that it has this kind of dual cast mindset as far as the job goes, which is really handy to see. So from here, that's that, and then I'm going to go over my left hand side and then my right side. So on the double cross hotbar here, I got engagement. You can see that I marry that with displacement here. The reason you want to marry that with displacement is that backflip, hit, but you run the risk as a Red Mage of falling off something if you're not very situationally aware, or certain levels might be a place where you can't then displace. That's where you want to use engagement. It shares the recast timer, and they're pretty much in the same spot. There is a risk here if you're kind of just in the thick of it and you're not really fully paying attention, it's still flipping off, but back here you've got engagement. So ultimately this is really where it it plays itself out, and hopefully this is going to be very helpful for you. I'm trying to make this all about muscle memory, trying to make it very keen to what I'm doing is what other jobs in that kind of role do. So try to set your cross roll skills and more to typically the same position, so you don't end up having to kind of rethink everything whenever it's needed. Okay, so like I said, I got Corp to Corp. If I needed to do this manually, I could, but I actually have this as macroed with Riposte, and I'll show you that macro here later in this video. Then I've got Fleche, Contra 6, and Surecast all pulling up the W cross hotbar left, and that's simple access as a double tap. Then on the left side, I've got Lucid Dreaming, Displacement, Reprise, and Addle, and those are here on the left, up, down, left, right. And then on the ABXY, I've got my Riposte macro. There's this Redoublement and Moulinette. And the reason I've got this is that if you think about as a controller player with the movement of the control stick itself, you want to be able to have access to anything that's ABXY or that square X triangle square, because when you're moving with the left stick, it's going to be very comfortable and easy to be able to kind of fire off any of these items. Same thing applies here. You can see these are instacast abilities, so I don't have to sit here and stop what I'm doing. I can still fire these off on the go. Obviously some things, can be an exception to the rule itself, but that for the most part is how that's going to play out. Where this really comes into play here is on my right side, and this is the adjustment that I've been testing. This is why I believe it's actually taken me this long to kind of have this guide ready for you guys as part of the Red Mage. I've moved Jolt 2 to my down on the D-pad action. Reason is that Jolt 2, I should not be casting. I should not be insta-casting that with the dual cast ability. And that is something, just a mental thing that I want to move, because I want to be able to insta-cast Ver Thunder, Ver Arrow, obviously my off the global cooldown abilities, Contra 6, and Fletch here. So that is that note in and of itself. This way, when I'm using Jolt 2, I'm then going to parry it here. And if I need to move, I have the full ability to move and still press these actions and still move from there. I also have immediate access to Swiftcast, to be able to easily fire off a skill necessary, so I can Swiftcast and then fire this off if needed, or also just slightly give myself a nice little boost to my DPS if necessary. Same thing applies to Magnification and Embolden. So we've got Jolt 2, Acceleration, we have Verstone, Ver Fire. The reason is these are going to have a cast times, but you can only trigger these off of the Ver Arrow and Ver Thunder. So I've got these over here. I'm not going to be able to move unless I swift cast those and fire those off as necessary. So that's going to be on the D-pad. So I have to be standing still to be able to get that cast off. And then over here, we already talked about it, Contra 6, Fletch, Ver Arrow, and Ver Thunder. Now, if I don't have dual cast up, these are going to have very long cast times, and I'm going to want to cancel that. This is to help train me into, standing still, and then do it on the move if necessary. Up here at the top, I've got a couple of potions of intelligence. This is just going to help your overall DPS as well. And then I've got Swift Cast, Embolden, and Magnification, which kind of parries and marries to what I've got over here on the left-hand side. Then we've got my expanded cross hotbar, and I want to talk to you guys about this. This is all set up on hotbar 2, and I'll show you all that settings here, obviously towards the end of the video if you really need that kind of information. So for my AoE rotations, for Thunder 2 and for Arrow 2, I have Fletch and Contra 6. So you can notice that I've got these skills placed a couple of different places, and that's just to help my overall rotation so I'm not bouncing around. One of the really nice strengths of Red Mage is that it's not overloaded with a lot of skill bloat. It gives me a real efficiency when it comes down to it. Then I also have Swift Cast, Ver Raise, Ver Cure, and Impact. Reason Impact is over here on the right hand side and Thunder and Arrow are on the left hand side is these have the shorter cooldowns or cast times, and then Impact's got the longest cast time, but if I've got that dual cast, I can impact like that, and it's ready to rock and roll. So whenever I'm playing this, if I go here to my expanded, you can see here, I can still see if my melees are ready to rock and roll. Even if I'm not paying attention to my black and white mana gauge, I can still see that here. And I've got those skills listed so I can easily AoE enemies down and still have access without having to pop out or pop up and go somewhere. So it's real comfortable. Plus it also gives me Swift Cast, and I can Ver Raise or Ver Cure if necessary and have that ability as a Red Mage, Res Mage, as we say. So now let's go ahead and take a moment and talk about kind of building out our rotations, and this is really going to be key. Obviously, acceleration is going to guarantee the Ver Stone and Ver Fire proc. So like basically acceleration, Jolt 2, then you can go to Ver Thunder, Ver Arrow, and continue to build up your bar, which is going to allow you to jump in. You're going to see a Magnification and Embolden. These are going to be some overall big boost to your DPS, especially with Magnification, because once you get to like 50 or even 40, this is going to double that. It's going to put you into attack mode, and then you can also get that 5% magic damage dealt as well. So keep in mind where that's coming from, because this is going to be nice to have. It's going to increase it by 10 seconds, so kind of play around with where that's necessary and where you want to use it, because 10 seconds isn't going to last that long. It's going to get you a couple more casts as a part of that rotation as it goes. I do want to make a note here with Reprise, because the question is like, when should you use Reprise comes into play as a Red Mage. And what you're going to find is that when there's like, especially the boss is about to leave or is about to die, or you're just not going to be able to get that cast off, Reprise is a really good up close. Think of it as an insta cast. It gets enhanced obviously when you have red and or your black and white mana or magic up. That's where you're probably not going to go to Reprise all the time, but it still needs to be kind of necessary when you're not necessarily going to be able to get that full rotation in here. When a phase change or more is coming up, you can sit here and Reprise and burn them down because you're not going to be able to get that cast off or more. So just keep in mind, don't knock it completely, but you wouldn't necessarily bring Reprise into your overall rotation as it goes. For a AoE rotation, it should be again pretty simple. For Thunder, Impact, for Arrow, Impact, and then obviously Contra 6, and you just keep going and going and going until all the enemies are dead. You can also, when this fills up, easily jump into kind of your riposte, or at least in this case, corp to core to get close, and then you can moulinet them down as well. But it's obviously about building out that rotation here to be able to get your Ver Holy and your Ver Flare, and then that can get you your Scorch. Obviously, you're like, where are those? Those are upgrade abilities, so let's go ahead and talk about those just a little bit here, because a Red Mage has a lot of enhanced abilities, a lot of upgrade abilities. So Ver Flare and Ver Holy base off of your redoublement, your redoublement combo, and then as you go from there, one of the things that this job does to me is it makes me curse more than anything else, because it's inherent that I might make a mistake, and that's okay. We're all going to make mistakes sometimes, but the best of the red mages are really going to have that on lockdown. They're going to be able to make sure they flare depending on how much mana they need in either one or Holy. And then that leads to Scorch, which is just a really big, you want to Scorch. And so anytime I accidentally like miskey it, you'll hear me swear. That's why I don't play Red Mage a lot on stream because it still can frustrate me greatly. So I want to kind of talk about that. That's those skills right there. That's kind of building out your rotation. I always kind of thought of the rotation as kind of like a figure 8. As a part of the Red Mage. It has a very kind of ebb and flow, but it also has a little bit of RNG tied into it. So you just have to always kind of be paying attention about where you are with that. So I said I want to talk about the macro because it's pretty straightforward. You can see here that it's going to use riposte if I'm up close. So it's not going to corp to core if I'm already up close. But if it's not, this is going to fail because you have a range on riposte, and thus it's going to then use my corp to core, which is going to be my gap closer. It's going to bring me right in to play here. And that's all this is. There's nothing extra fancy about it. It's just saying, oh, you can't use this, go ahead and use this. And then if I am close, it's going to use this. But most likely, even if you've got a low ping and you already did corp to core because of its cooldown, you are going to just go ahead and riposte anyway, and that's going to lead you into your combo. It saves me a button press personally. It saves me just one button press, and it's kind of nice. But the nice thing, especially with the double cross hotbar, is there is plenty of room for you to kind of play with it. So if you're not keen on using macros, you don't need to be. I would recommend maybe then using corp to core and moving it down into this category right here, because that's going to be in the same spot. So that way you can kind of play with that. It's really up to you on what you want to do, and you go from there. So let's go ahead, and we talked about our layout. We talked about our kind of, skills and kind of building out a rotation. Let's go into our character configuration, and let's go into your hotbar settings, and let me tell you what I've got set up. So I do have display recast times. I do have hide unassigned slots. This is what's going to remove all that gray from my UI and bar, and that's going to be hopefully helpful for you guys. I also turn off the hotbar numbers. You can see there 3. I want to turn it off. I don't want to see those. Again, trying to keep my UI as clean as possible. I have the enable hotbar cycling button, include pet hotbar when cycling, and enable drag and drop positioning on that. You can also then play around with the hotbars that are displayed and how they are, and more. So that's that. Sharing is really important because we have all of these set to non-share. These are Red Mage specific rotations, actions, and skills, etc. But you do see that I got 8, 9, and 10, and 7 and 8 as my shared. So for my cross hotbar, you can see 7. If I kind of click down here, go into my 7, this is going to see all this stuff. So as a part of my expanded, you can see when I hold down left trigger and then go to right trigger, I have these skills. When I hold down right trigger and go to left trigger, it actually takes me to 7, in which I've got sprint, my limit break, my mounts, and a couple of like kind of targeting macros that I more or less use on my tank when I'm calling out kind of an order of kill operation, etc. So that is kind of where you see 7 and 8 being shared. And the reason you want to go into shared is because under the custom, when you enable the expanded hotbar controls with left trigger, right trigger, you can say LT and RT equals 2, RT and LT equals 7. So you get to pick what hotbar those are going to pull from. This is going to be job specific. This is going to be shared across all jobs. Now for the expanded cross hotbar, or excuse me, the double cross hotbar with the left tap and the right tap, this is where you set it as 3 left and 3 right. You won't be able to drag skills onto this. This is just a shortcut for display. You have to put them on 3 left and 3 right. So if I go and click here and then I go to 3, you can see here that I can now move those skills around and go from there and play around with that. And that's kind of how that's all managed. So for my enable customization, when my weapon is sheathed, I can set that hotbar 1, 7, and 8 are cyclable. So if I press right bumper, I can go from 1 to 7 to 8. I don't really care to go to 2 or 3. I'm going to have everything main on my 1, but you can easily build that out if necessary. Now, if my weapon's out, it's only going, if I right tap R1, R bumper, it's only going to just pop that. It's not going to do it. You can still hold it down, and that way you can press B, X, Y, up, down, left, right to be able to cycle the different hotbars as it goes. You can also do something special for PvP settings, but we'll do a more in-depth PvP guide in a future video. Be sure to hit that like button if you want to see more PvP guides here on this channel. So last thing we have under the cross, we have always enabled the cross hotbar. We also have it on hold mode. Some of these features are available on toggle, some are available on mixed, but not all are available on toggle and mixed. So I do recommend the hold mode for you to be able to kind of display it. And earlier we talked about always displaying the cross-op bar, the W cross-op bar after input, and then I have it positioned separately. You can uncheck that, and you can have it you can have it by default where it's where the computer wants it, or you can kind of position it wherever you need it to make your UI make the most sense of all of that. So let me go ahead and say yes, I do not want to save those changes. So from here, that is our Red Mage controller layout and our guide. We're going to be doing more in-depth guides as it comes to the jobs within Final Fantasy XIV, as well as other videos and video games that we love to play. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. We also been doing polls on what jobs we should level next. Right now I'm working on Samurai at the time of this recording, and ultimately by the time here in a month or two, we'll hopefully have even more of the jobs mastered. Up next will be my White Mage guide, so if you're looking forward to that, check the link in the description below the playlist again. Obviously that's going to be what it is. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should mention at this point. Like, favorite, subscribe, share with all your friends. These guides, communicate with us what you need. Let us know if we missed anything, or if you need more clarification. Again, check out the Ultimate Player Guide, Ultimate Controller Guide. Welcome Xbox players whenever that game comes online for you guys. And yeah, I think that's it. I love you guys very much. Thanks so much for watching this video. This has been Brian for Work to Game. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope to see you in my next video. But until then, take care.